Hello crafty friends, this is a two-part video. In the first half of the video, I'm going to be creating some fun background papers, and in the second part of the video, I'm going to use those papers in my art journal as collage background. I don't really have any plan of what I'm doing yet. I'm just going to work intuitively and just see what comes of these different papers. I'm using plain copy paper, which is 80 GSM. The reason I've used this is because we want it thin enough to be able to use it as collage background. We don't want it too chunky and too bulky. I'm starting with these three acrylic paints. These are the Dina Wakley acrylic paints, and I've got the colors Lapis, Ocean, and Turquoise. I'm using a small cardboard roll. It's from some tape that I had kept, and I'm just dipping it into the paint and then pressing it onto the paper. The best part of this is because the paint has been watered down quite a bit, it's creating some bubbles when I lift the cardboard roll up, and then it pops onto the paper and creates some beautiful texture. I'll put that to the side to dry while I work on the next one. Now, I'll be honest, not all of these turned out great. They were all just really experiments. Some I really loved, some not so much, but I think in the end we'll get to use them all. For this one, I want to use some bubble wrap printing. I've seen a lot of artists use this and I really like the effect. I have this lovely one with little hearts. This is actually what my Stationery Pal orders come in. They come wrapped in this beautiful heart-shaped bubble wrap, and I've been wanting to use it for a while. So I'm just adding the acrylic paint directly onto the bubble wrap, and then I'm going to press it onto the paper. These are also the Dina Wakley acrylic paints, and they're lemon and lime. Where I'm doing repetitive patterns, I am going to speed up the video quite a bit so it doesn't draw out the video too long and it doesn't bore you to death. You get the idea in the beginning of that paper of how I'm going to do it, and then I'll speed it up so you can just see the process. This watercolor technique that I'm going to do now, I have used before in a previous video, which I'll link in the description below, where I used autumn colors. This is a beautiful watercolor palette. It's from Stationery Pal. I will put all the products I have used in the description below with links to all the websites. Some of them do have some discounts for you to use when you make a purchase. Just look out for those in the details in my description box. This one just really is lots of watery paint and splattering. For the next one, I'm just going to do some markings with some black acrylic paint and a paintbrush. Very roughly, nothing really planned, just whatever you feel like doing. Some big ones, some small ones, different shapes. Just keep going. I actually find this quite therapeutic and relaxing, and especially if you're having a little bit of a loss of mojo for creating. Just creating some of these background papers can give you some inspiration and get your mojo back. And they can be used in many projects for the future. This one I'm going to do some stenciling with some distress ink. The colors I'm using are Abandoned Coral and Picked Raspberry. These are the Tim Holtz products, and I'm just doing it very roughly through the stencil. This stencil is available from the Reject shop here in Australia. I did buy it a few months ago. I'm not sure if it's still available, but always look out at the Reject shop. They already have a lot of good stencils. I'm going to do some more stenciling, but I'm going to be spraying this one. I'm using Color Splash from Little Birdie Crafts in Black Currant and the Tim Holtz Distress Oxide spray in Milled Lavender. You can see I'm not being very neat and tidy, but I do like the effect it creates. And then to not waste anything, I'm using another piece of paper and just getting all the ink that's on the stencil onto that paper. It creates additional interest and some more collage background. I'm going to do some stamping. I'm using the Tim Holtz Ideology cling foam stamps in the block uppercase. I'm just attaching them to an acrylic block just randomly, some upside down, some back to front. They're not really going to make any sense. And then I'm going to use some distress ink. I've got Vintage Photo and Walnut, and then I'm also going to do it in black. And just I'm changing it around so the letters are always in a different space and a different angle. Next up, just some more markings. Just feel free to let your hands do whatever they want to do. I'm using some black acrylic paint, and then I'm also going to use the leftover blue and turquoise that I used in the very first paper. That's just to get rid of some of the paint so we don't waste. And remember, anything goes. Just relax, don't overthink it, and just make the marks on the paper. I really loved my first paper with the circles. It is my favorite and I want to recreate it with some additional colors. So I've got my Dina Wakley acrylic paints again. Colors are Sedona, Magenta and Lemon. And then using some of this leftover paint, I'm just going to make some little brush strokes onto another paper. Once these are all dry, I'm going to work on them some more. I don't want them just flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them in half and I'm going to leave half as is. And then the other half, I'm going to do some additional markings on. I love the ideas of scribbles or handwriting in any kind of artwork. I'm not always very creative in my writing. I'm creative maybe in my art, but not in my writing. So to help me, I'm actually just using something off Google. I found a poem about being thankful or gratitude. So I'm rewriting that with a black Posca pen onto the one of my background papers. What you write doesn't have to make any sense. It could be just personal things that you want to write, whatever you feel like. Just get the markings on the paper. Using the black Posca pen again, I'm just going over the circles very, very roughly. As you can see, I'm scribbling over them just to give it a bit more depth. This purple one, which is the ink, is not working great. It seems that it absorbs the white Posca pen. It doesn't actually let it write, so I'm going to leave that one for now and work on it maybe later. Then for this one, I'm going to use different color Posca pens in different pinks and corals and continuing with the poem. What I did learn from this exercise is I think acrylic paints and like Posca pens would work best, only because once we paste it into our project, if we're adding any kind of wet medium on top, the ink is going to react and it's going to either change color or it's going to get thinner or smudge, whereas the acrylic paint tends to hold a bit better. You can still use it, but maybe it's not the best option. And this is why we do these different things, because that's how we learn when we experiment. I'm not writing anything here. I'm actually really just scribbling across the page. I'm using a white Posca pen and then a lime green one, just in different areas, just scribbles. And I enjoyed the scribbling so much, I'm going to do it on this one too, using different color Posca pens that are a similar color or tone to the ink that I have used. And for this one, again, just going around each one very roughly, no perfect circles. We don't want perfection. We want it to look handmade and rustic, adding some crosses in some, whatever you feel like doing. And now I'm going to make an art journal page in my art journal using some of these handmade papers. This art journal that I'm using, I have made myself, some scrap papers. I do have a tutorial on how I made it. I will link that below. And I also have some ready-made ones that I'm selling at my Etsy shop. I'm choosing some of my favorite pieces and I'm just tearing a few pieces off. I really don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm going to work very intuitively on this piece and just see what comes of it. Because this paper is just normal copy paper, it's thin enough and I can use a glue stick to adhere it to my project. You'll notice I purposefully left the rough end of this piece of collage paper hanging off the end. I personally like that in my journals. The entire book is actually quite uneven. You'll see here my left page is smaller than my right and there's like edges that are torn and sticking out of the book. I personally like that, but if you don't, you can just trim it off to the correct size. I'm working with other bits that I have on my desk from a previous project. Like I said, I don't really have a plan. I'm just putting it down where I think it feels right or where it looks good. Sometimes if we overthink things that don't work, just let it go and see what develops. I would love if you subscribed to my channel. I have so many videos coming your way. I'm going to be doing more in this art journal, and I also have some junk journals that I'm creating. I'll do flip throughs of and also show you the entire process of decorating those journals. I also make ephemera, index cards, and then there's my full deck challenge. Also, if you subscribe, don't forget to hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Once all my collaging is done, I'm going to add some gesso. I'm using a flat small paintbrush and also my finger every now and then, and I'm just smoothing it over some sections of the collaging. I use gesso like this often in a lot of my projects because I find it's a way to sort of make everything cohesive. It also lightens the background, so it goes into the background and it makes everything linked together and makes it uniform. The idea is not to cover everything with the gesso. You want the designs and the colors to shine through. You just want to mute it down. Also, using a baby wipe helps to blend the gesso. To add some interest and a little bit of texture, I'm going to do the bubble wrap technique, just using the white gesso in just certain parts of the pages. Some parts are a little thick of gesso, so I'm just going to use a baby wipe just to thin those down. I want to add some contrasting color to add additional interest, so I'm going to use my watercolor palette and I want to add a turquoise color. I get a lot of questions about this watercolor palette that you see here, and all I can say is that I got it on AliExpress about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just sort of an unbranded cheaper version of the real thing, and on the box it had the words SamiArt. I'm sure if you search on eBay or AliExpress you'll find something similar. A very light touch of turquoise just to make the color pop a bit. We don't want to inundate it with turquoise. And then also a little bit of turquoise splatter. I'm going to add some more markings. I'm using a coral colored Posca pen and just going over some of the little circles from our bubble wrap just to sort of contrast with the circles that are the solid color on the far right. And just using a turquoise one to make a few little markings as well. I'm quite enjoying this mark making, and if you couldn't tell, my Posca pens are new. I did get them from Santa for Christmas, so I might be using them quite a bit. I've been wanting them for a really long time. I was then searching through all my printables that I have already printed out to try and find a focal point for this. I wanted a butterfly was my idea, but then I found these beautiful turquoise hydrangeas, which are actually from a steampunk kit from Nectar's Creations. I'll put the link below in the description, and I think that color just works beautiful. So I've just fussy cut them out, and this butterfly is from Digital Collage Club, and then I'm going to add one at the top and one at the bottom, and I'm going to sort of let them overlap or hang over the page. And then the dark orange butterfly will balance well with the orange dots on the right. Before I stick anything down, I'm going to add some black splatter with watered down acrylic paint. I really love the effect it leaves, and also helps to bring the background together. Now sticking down the hydrangeas, I'm going to do it over both pages, so it's sort of like the center, and just sticking that down with Mod Podge because I have that handy. You could also use craft glue or even a glue stick, although the glue stick might struggle a bit to stick over all the gesso and the layers underneath, so maybe a more wet adhesive would be better. I was going to trim these bottom hydrangeas flat against the page, and then I thought, no, I think it'll be better if I fussy cut the bottom too, and then that rough edge will stick out at the bottom. Then find a spot for my bright orange butterfly. I moved it around a bit and finally decided to put it on the far left, which will balance out the orange on the right. And then I'm going to add a little sentiment too. I'm adding some black around the little butterfly. I'm using a black watercolor pencil. I'm just dipping the point in some water and then just going gently around the edge. Although it's a very small change, it really makes a really big difference and helps this butterfly pop off the page. These little sentiments that I have are, the brand is called Judy Craft and I got these off eBay. I really hope you enjoyed this video and were inspired to create your own collage paper and your own art journal pages with that paper. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I'll see you again soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye.